Okay, so this is the last of the lectures for the first exam, and what we're doing is ecology. These are kind of the bits and pieces pages that are on the study guide. And so what I would like to do is start with talking about biodiversity. And before we do that, there's a big thing on amphibians. We're talking frogs, which is the most common one people know, but salamanders, things like this. And we call these guys biological indicators or biometers. We're going to also talk about food webs and then the role in human health, antibiotics and painkillers. So amphibians are this group of organisms that unfortunately are disappearing drastically, but they could be a huge benefit for us in medicines and things like that. So what we want to do is give you a principle, and I believe I gave you this once before, but organisms often reflect or are indicative of environmental conditions can be used as biometers. And I told you the story of the canary in the coal mine, and so I just wanted to give you the same principle. It's not an extra principle, with a couple of different concepts. So again, the fact that they are disappearing should be a real concern to us. All right, so just to give you another principle that goes along with frogs, is there's more in common between ecosystems and between different organisms and species than there are differences. And so as the frog goes, so do we. And so we have to be very, very careful. Once we start seeing all these species disappearing, it becomes an issue for us. And you see in this cartoon, I'm showing you sharks because they are actually a threatened species that we will talk about later. Okay, so let's talk about what biodiversity is. And that just means bio means life, diversity means a lot. And there is a lot of species on this planet. We're not sure how many. We've got millions of them named, and there are still discoveries today. And, you know, we think about that, you know, we're destroying habitat and we don't even know the species that are out there. Most of those are insects, maybe small plants, but they can be large animals. We found a large deer and a smaller primate not too long ago. Now, what do we mean by no? You know, we're talking in the biological literature, but there are native people that think we walk up and like, oh, we've never seen this before. Yeah, we see it all the time. Kind of a concept. Well, there are 4 different types of diversity, or at least on how you look at it. So there's functional, ecological, species, and genetic. And so what I want you to do is make sure you know the differences between the 4. I don't think I'm going to spend time on that. But there'll definitely be a question on the exam that asks you what are the 4 different types and or what are those types. So make sure that you read those little yellow boxes and know those. All right, the other question we have is biomes. And biomes are a little bit different in the sense that they don't fit in they do fit in our hierarchy, but they're often left off a list. And so what I want you to know about biomes are that they are typically described by some indicator species, some key species, and vegetation. So this is the type of plants we see there. These are the types of animals we see there, and there's usually some kind of climate component to it. So if you look down here, we can see some of the different biomes, and we have the deciduous forests, which are forests that lose their leaves. We have the prairie grasslands, which are being torn up for cropland. Coniferous forests, these would be pine tree forests, and we can see a couple of different ones here as we're going up and over the mountains. These are also sometimes called taiga, T-A-I-G-A, another name for that. And then obviously we have our desert habitats, which are characterized by cactus and less than 10 inches of water a year. And then we actually have the one that we live in, and I do want you to know this, that we live in coastal chaparral and scrub. Sometimes the actual type that is here in Walnut would be coastal sage scrub. And so that would be our biome that we live in here in Walnut, California, and most of Southern California, actually. Um, so those are the biomes. How do you think the insects today? We just want to make sure you understand that insects are important. You know, as I sit out on my porch and record these over the last couple of semesters, I've had my neighbors actually have their yard sprayed for insects, which, you know, I just shake my head. Of course, they see me, so they always come over and want, hey, we can spray your yard too. And I'm absolutely not. And they're like, who takes care of your insects? And I'm like, I do. And I don't think they understand what I mean by take care of. You know, obviously I don't want ants and things in my house, but again, they're an important part of the food web we're going to talk about. And so as long as they stay out of my house, I'm a happy camper. And of course, we try to keep things down like mosquitoes and things like that. But insects are good. 50% of all animals are insects. So most animals are arthropods, which means jointed legs, things like lobster, crab, along with insects. And then most arthropods are insects. So insects are great for pollination. They're for decomposers and detritivores, which means they eat up all the dead stuff. And for pest control. Actually, lots of insects eat other things. So if you have an aphid problem, which I've had in the past, aphids suck fluid out of plants. Instead of spraying, there are two ways to do it. You can do it with a safe soap. The soap is oily, and it means that the animals can't breathe and they will drop off. And or ladybird beetles. You know, some people call them ladybugs. They're not actually bugs, they're beetles. But they will eat aphids, and so you can actually pick those up at like Home Depot now. They sell them, and so it is. Insects are needed. I do want you to know E.O. Wilson. E.O. Wilson is a great biologist. He is actually the name that is associated with biodiversity today. And he used to teach at Harvard. He's retired. I think he still gives guest lectures. But he's a mycologist. He actually, that's not even right. It should be mycologist, but that's okay. What I need to know, he studied ants. That's the key. And this is a book that he won a Pulitzer for. And it was the first textbook ever to win a Pulitzer. And it is big, it is thick, and it has small print, and it is everything you need to know about ants. Ant behavior, species of ants. And so anyway, he also wrote a book called The Diversity of Life that he's well known for also. And that's kind of where he got his start. And he is now working on a project called the Encyclopedia of Life. It's an online database. And so very, very influential in biodiversity. He is the person. And actually today they asked him, what would you study if you had it to do all over again? And he actually said microbes. He actually said bacteria, because there's so many of them, and he believes they're such a key in our food web, which we'll talk about next time. So we will stop the recording.